pop on and check that things are actually working okay, and then I'll get some programming going. Let's see here. All right. All right, I think I'm live. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so I was just checking on my screen before I share the screen, my own Twitch thing, so let's see here. I'm doing this on two computers. I've got two keyboards. I'm just confusing myself. There we go. There's me. But let's get rid of that. We can actually just close this all up because I'll work on that later. And here we are. I've set up my desktops for all the work I theoretically need to do. Hello. So I've got here just a terminal. Oops. Come on. Where I can do all the normal terminal things. I can open examples like that. Opens it up in a new tab. No problem. I've got my Emacs here, and I have here, actually, I gotta set up my workflow, but I have the document I'm working on the left and the rendered version of it on the right here. And today I have just one thing I want to work on. I don't know, it might take a while because there might be stuff I'm not thinking about how to implement it properly, but I just have some notes on the left here that I can add. So I want to add an extrude feature to the bit of code that produces these SVG 3D renders. And the reason I want to do that is, in theory, then I can make any 2D drawing shape and then extrude it into 3D. And that's an extremely useful feature. In particular for this, I'm just making a pretty simple standing desk design, and I want to do it all out of plywood. So that means basically everything is going to be 2D shapes, like kind of locked in and screwed into each other. So if I can just extrude 2D, then I can get the design done basically with just those features alone. So that's kind of the focus for the day. So to get started, what should I do next? Oh yeah, so I'm gonna set up, I mentioned this in the other stream a little bit. Right now, if I change this on the left here, it does not change on the right. I also have the wrong if I do this, that's not gonna work yet because the server's off, but that's okay. So this will be the correct page to go to, but I have to set up the live server first. Just checking here. Yeah. So, what is all that about? Okay, close this. In here, I can run live server. And what this will do now is just detect changes in that folder and automatically refresh this, whatever page I've got going on. So now this is serving. I can close this. This is serving correctly. Oop. Let's zoom it out a little bit there. But, so, if I make a change here, the page refreshes, but, the page right here, it refreshes, but it doesn't actually incorporate the changes that I made because the build function isn't actually running. So I'm just going to get that going now for a minute. So I have to load up this namespace, get the parser going. I'm making a note for myself because this is tedious and I don't like doing it. There. So I'm just keeping little notes to myself because there's a lot of stuff that I need to improve with this. So what I'm doing right now, I'm just loading manually each bit of code that I need into the running instance to the REPL here. Oh. And I guess, I don't know that I mentioned this in my last stream. If there's anyone watching and they just want to watch and don't ask questions, that's obviously totally fine. I'm cool with whatever. But sometimes I might gloss over something that is obvious to me or don't think needs explaining or whatever. Go ahead and ask questions whenever you want. I'll see if I can answer them. I'm not an expert. I'm self-taught when it comes to all this programming and stuff anyway. But yeah, questions are fun. Sometimes I can explain things and I like doing that. So I can't remember if I did the compiler already, so I'll just do it again. Alright, so now we're back in correctly to this, and I can run that on standing point is the name of the this is the name of the project I'm working on. I borrowed, so I mentioned in the other stream, I use this code library to make quilt patterns with diagrams for my mom. And her first couple of patterns that I'm working on, they have a point is part of the name, starting point, pivot point, stuff like that. I just thought I was being clever as to just use the same thing for my own project names, at least at the beginning. So that's why that's called that. There's no actual reason. It's just for fun. Anyway, what I'm doing theoretically is setting up a watcher, and I just close the watcher. Okay. I'm looking at I've noticed I've got my Mac. I don't know if you can. Yeah, my Mac sharing the screen to the screen I'm actually looking at, running my capture card through. So there's two spots that I can be looking, and normally I look right here, but I want to be looking here, so that's why everything's going all weird, or why I'm looking around like crazy. But that's completely unimportant. So now what I'm going to do is just check that the watcher's actually running. It's not the fastest, which is obviously another problem to fix. Oh, that was weird. It is running. Yeah, so there it was near instantaneous, but other times it's slower. So that's the reason that popped here is because this used to be draw faces like that. And see, this is an example of where it's actually running slower. So there's the faces, and then the edges is like a wireframe view. And there it popped back and made a change there. So work in progress. There. Work in progress. So I already, actually these are all wrong. See this? That's supposed to be 0.5 because I'm gonna go with a 1/2-inch ply design. And the reason for that, I think, is because the final top I want to have 1 inch thick, because then you can make it nice and sturdy. You can sand it, finish it, and all that stuff quite nicely. And then you could just sandwich two together. And then everything else, the legs, I originally thought I was going to use like 2x4s, but that's kind of lame. So instead I'm going to design something with plywood pieces. And in theory it can look pretty nice actually, because the top face is a good piece of ply. You can finish really nice and make it look super professional. So that's the theory. We'll see if I can make it work. Okay, so I have the workflow working here a little bit. I'm keeping little notes to myself here. Metric plywood as well. Ooh, one thing I want to do is make do I want to do this? I'm thinking, so what I can do is make I can define symbols in this spot here and save dimensions that matter everywhere, right? So the global thickness I can make 0.5, and then instead of manually putting 0.5, I can write global thickness here, and it should work no problem. The problem with that, well, I don't know, maybe it's fine, because it definitely makes things easier to change. So here, if I go just to make it obvious, that's 2 inches, so this top piece should change in a moment to be, that's weird. Oh, no, I know why that is. So this here, comment that out. Oops. So that top piece now is 2 inches thick because it is referencing this number here. So that's really nice if I have some global things to do, but the potential risks, well, I'm gonna go for it now actually, because it might end up being the smarter thing. The only issue is this might not be the best like data structure to store it in, so I might think about that later. What might make sense is something like this, where you define the state being the state of the whole application. In this case it's a document, but then you use a map, and then you can do something like thickness and give it a value, and then I could also put in there width and all of those things. But for right now, actually, let me briefly explain what that actually is. If I do print line, and then I do here, I want to actually reference the state width value 20. So, and copy that and do thickness. There we go. Save that. What if I did this right? It should show up here. It should just actually print out 2 and 20 in the document. Oh, I don't need print lines in this case though, I think. Let's see. Yeah, so, oh, of course, I'm being ridiculous here. I shouldn't have the number 20 here. I should have the word state, because it needs to pull the key, the value of the key width from the map state, likewise with thickness. And I don't need the print lines because in the back, there we go. I'm just evaling these exactly. So if I, that's like doing this in the REPL. If I define ASDF, A is 5, B is 10, right? So ASDF is this map with keys A and B. I could basically use the key as a function to pull the value of it directly. No? What did I do? That's weird. A little bit of a glitch there. Okay. There we go. I don't know what happened there. It was that was a problem not with the code but with Emacs itself. So I could use B ASDF to get 10 out of there, and then if I do a key that doesn't exist, it should return nil, I think. Yeah. So that's just what's happening with the state idea here. But for right now, I'm a little lazy and I'm gonna just define symbols directly. But I don't want to type long variables, so I'm gonna be kind of bad and use just really short short names here. Does this work? I forget if there's a special. Okay, that works, but is it annoying to type *T? Yes, it is. What if I do what's easy to type? That's the symbol. I can't do that. GT. I'm gonna do just this. Use the rule of global variables starting with G, like that. So instead of that, so GT is global thickness, and I'm just defaulting to inches for right now. In future, def G units, def G units, perfect. It could be imperial or metric. Currently unused. Default is imperial because unfortunately in Canada we sell to the States so much that everything still uses inches. I'd really dislike it, but that's just the way it goes. Okay, so I don't need that right now. Just make my text file really messy, just because. Def global width. Oh, what's this? Is not. That's weird. I wonder why that is. I don't know why this is displaying here. It shouldn't. It doesn't need to. Maybe it's something with comments. Maybe it's not handled correctly. What have I done? Okay. I gotta make a note of that. Okay. Fix extension, fix the extension transforms. contents are printed instead of executed when there is no function being called in the body of an X section. Sure, future me will understand that, I guess. Oh, there's also errors happening. Everything's a mess. Okay, so forget that noise then. We're just going to keep this part really simple right now. Global thickness, 0.5. Global width. How do I make it actually execute correctly? Do. Oh man, this is a silly problem. It shouldn't. Why is it happening? I think it's because I think if I go, nope, it's here. Fix this transform. It doesn't work without a function being run. I think that's because I'm just bunching it all into a string, and then read string does some weird stuff with, I can find out, end of file. This is a comment, but if I do new line def a as 2, okay. Sorry, my phone, I should probably put it on do not disturb. There we go. Where was I? Control C and B. Yeah, so read string, it just elides the comments entirely. So if there's, no, that's not what's happening. Well, I can actually what? Okay. Oh, I mean to give this an actual value, maybe. Maybe that's the maybe the whole problem is it's just invalid code. Well, that's not it. Let me finish writing what I need to write in here. Global width, global width, depth as 20, and then the global height is, what did I put, 39.5. So if I correctly design things to be parametric using these dimensions, right, then I can actually change the shape of the whole thing for different contexts. So I could make a much bigger desk by changing the global width and global depth, right? I could give a bigger surface area, or I could turn it from a standing desk into a regular desk by lowering the height. Or if someone wants to use this design who happens to be way taller than I am, they can change this number up if they want to. So that's the basic concept here, is you have all the variables, like the high level variables that matter to the end result, in one spot where you can change them easily. In the future, I could even make a little macro that adds, say, sliders to the dimensions at the top here. So you could, in the document directly, you could just change the values and see all of the designs change. I think that would be a really cool feature, which I'll work on later. I keep scrolling the wrong way. Let's add a note here. Feature globals, get a slider drop down in the rendered document, allowing the user to change dims on the fly. That would be cool. Okay, but I have to figure out why this isn't actually working, because that's not going to be good. Another thing, this won't error out because global thickness it actually still has a definition because it just was loaded into memory and stays there. If I were to restart the REPL and load it up again, this would then give an error. So that's one kind of thing you have to keep in mind with REPLs and stuff. Like ASDF, for example, still exists and I'm not using it anymore, so like the symbol is still there, it just points to nil now, right? Which is different than, like, I can redefine things, but you can end up over polluting your namespace a little bit if you're not careful. So that's a bit of a problem sometimes. But if I change this, this should now fail, I think, because global GT is not defined, I think. And yeah, so that this here is the error that the watcher runs the build process, and the build process returned an error. Oops, don't need that. Don't need to read the error because I know why the error exists. What I don't know is why these don't. Let's see. I wonder if it's still going to give me an error, or if it's going to work now. Wrong way. Still giving me an error. Okay, so it's time to go ahead and do this, MD to page of slurp standing point dot MD markdown. Oh boy, unmatched delimiter. Man, I'm doing something wrong. Okay. Did I change something here by accident? No. Let's try, I'm going to run this function directly on this string. Okay, so there's the string. Oh, clear is not what I need to do. I need transform x ASDF. Okay, so that it works on the string. So okay, let me describe what's happening here. Transform x has taken this string, put square brackets around it to turn it into a vector when it reads the string, and then it does an eval on all of those sections. So it evaled to multiply 2 by 2, and then it actually, in the function here, it puts it into a div, so that's why then it displays in the rendered thing. It displays the result in the rendered view. Probably something I can change around as like a configurable feature, but for the purposes of what I'm using it for, that's kind of what I wanted anyway. So you see the div for here, and then nils for all of those, because if you just define something, oh wait, I don't want to use ASDF fois as that. It should, I don't know what I'm talking about. Let's do this. Def fois ASDF. Escape those. Oh, eval's wrong. Read string, and then eval. Read string. Yeah, so if I eval, oops, too many brackets. Okay. Oh, I goofed. Eval, read string. There we go. Should it return nil? I think it probably should. Okay, let's see. Maybe that's not where the problem is. I'll just keep going. I'm going to doc parse. Is that a function? Yeah. Slurp standing point dot md. Oop. Okay. What I need to see is the actual string that is being passed into this thing, which is x here. Copy that. Oh. That's not the problem. There's a problem here. What did I do? Okay, it's still, let's pop this back onto the proper line. Something doesn't make sense to me right now. Error, search failed. That's weird. I don't know what's going on. Okay, well, let's do this thing where we get rid of stuff that... So if I get rid of that entirely, does this work? That's my question. Or is the problem now something different? It's something different, and I don't know what I've done. Shoot, that's frustrating. All right, let's figure out. I did change that. That wouldn't be the problem, would it? It might be. Okay, unmatched delimiter. Maybe if I actually like paid attention to the error messages that I saw before. I think that'll probably fix it now. Indeed it does. Oh man, I just sidetracked myself way too much there. That was silly. Okay, let's get that back in there. Let's fix this and put this here as QT. Okay, there we go. Wrong way. Everything working? Question mark. It's building. There we go. Okay, so now if I make this 5, I should, once it builds, yes, okay. Oh, silly me. Well, okay, so now that that is more or less working, I'm gonna make the rest of these referenced in here. So instead of 32, we've got the, instead of make cuboid, that's an annoying, it's an annoying name. So I'm gonna make it chunk here, cuboid, define it not as make cuboid but as box. Save that. So when I save this, it says here tangled, and what that actually has done is if I open up source stylo, oh no, in that case here chunk, it tangled as in it basically copied and pasted the source into an actual source file here. So def in box is right here. So if I were to box, you can see the difference once it's done tangling. Tangling, it unfortunately slows down the more code bits you have everywhere, but there it is. It saved the change in there. Another thing to remember, or I always have to remember, sometimes it's tempting. I want to edit the code here in the resulting file, but then you desynchronize your org file with your source, and then your org will overwrite the change you made in there. So it can be like you can kind of trick things around if you want to do a temporary change but revert it back to what you had before. You could mess with that, but the workflow becomes absolutely ridiculous if you do too much stuff like that. So always room to improve my workflow. That's what I have to keep in mind. Anyway, so now instead of make cuboid, I can change all of those occurrences to box, and that should work. Save that. I guess my face might be in the way of this rendering a little bit, eh? If I'm gonna do will that work, or will it barf on that? Oh, it doesn't. I need to actually fill the paragraphs with text. Oh no, that doesn't work either. Whatever, it doesn't matter. This is pure filler just to bump the image up. What a hack. What a hack. I think maybe in JavaScript or even in CSS I could make some kind of scroll past or something like that. Let's make a note of that. See if CSS has something. Try to avoid using JS if possible, because these are supposed to be self-contained, mostly static documents, so wouldn't be great to have a bunch of JS in there, JavaScript, if I can avoid that. Let's see here. I was looking at the VOD from my stream last time, and I think it worked out okay, but I also did a game stream and it was kind of choppy, so I changed some things. I'm just kind of trying to keep an eye on my OBS stuff to see if anything is going wrong. I don't entirely know what I'm doing yet. That's it's a bit of a learning process. I'm happy to learn new stuff, but I just got to fumble around a little bit. That was a total tangent. I am back to oh yeah, that's right. Setting these globals to global width here. These are going to change. These aren't even real anymore. Those are just going to be totally different. But this top here is set of 20, global depth, GD. Right, and this one, so I had a thing here. I don't need to do this anymore. That was going to be like a shelf portion, but I'm gonna rework that later. Def top, tabletop. So one really nice thing with Clojure is you can just, and Lisps in general, you can really quickly figure out, oh, this here I can actually replace entirely with tabletop, like that, right? And even here I've noticed the move function is actually moving it. It's not moving it at all, so the base table itself can literally be just a box here, right? So def tabletop, and calling that def here will result in the box being drawn there. So I can wrap this whole thing in a move if I want to. I think little note for myself here. Check arg orders of move, rot, scale in chunk. Do they work with map? Do they make sense? Example, do they work nicely with map? That's just a note to myself about the way, for whatever reason, this move function that I set up here, moves this object, which you put first, and then moves it this much. And I think I did that to use with the thread first macro, but I just want to rethink to see if that makes sense to put the solid here first, or put the coordinate or like the delta movement first. I don't know. It'll achieve the same result, but I just need to see what's better. So back to this, I'm going to move it 0 inches in X, 0 inches in Y, and I'm going to move it down 10 just to see that this actually will work, because it should. And we should see this pop. Oh, it should be -10. Yeah, so it popped up 10. So the origin here is 0, 0, 0, and I moved it along Z 10 inches. So it's off the it's up past the edge of the SVG a little bit. So if I negative that, we should see it move down 20 when the rebuild occurs. There it is. So actually, just for placeholders' sake, I can mock out this shelf here. I'm going to pretend that the tabletop is a shelf moved down a little bit. So what I've done, yeah. So there's the tabletop itself, right? And then this next line moves a copy of tabletop down 10 inches. So that's that shelf there. And it's just a way to quickly mock up a shape of things. This obviously doesn't look very finished or professional. So I can continue with the design. But one cool thing now, may as well showcase this for a moment. The idea, or a nice thing with these globals here. Oh, let me sidetrack myself one more time. Let me see if this will work. No. Okay. I have to fix that. That's just silly. I should be able to have an executable section that, yeah. Oh, here. This is better. String nothing. Yeah, I definitely need to fix this. It's so silly that I need to, like, nope, that didn't work. Nope, I'm sitting here waiting and it's already done. Oh, okay. All right. I'm being silly. Last thing to try. Okay, not good. Not good at all. Multiply 1 by 1 gives me 1. There we go. Like I was saying, this is ridiculous. Obviously, I either need to have an additional thing called like call it variables or something, or declare something like that. But it just makes more sense to have the executable thing work as you would expect, and it doesn't right now. Like I don't want to have to put in a random function that actually runs in order for these to be defined. That's just ridiculous. So I'll figure that out later. Last, I keep sidetracking myself here. So this here, I manually calculated the height last time that the boxes, that these legs had to be, right? So it was the total height 39.5 minus, which was at the time 0.75, the thickness. So instead of manually calculating, obviously what you want to do is just have the computer do it for you. So that's going to be g height minus gt, and that'll evaluate correctly in there. So I can just replace this with that. There. And then positioning is happening here, right? Let's see, it's a little readable, more legible now. This is, you want to move it, since the box draws with the box on the center of 0, 0, 0, you have to move it by half of its own height. So that is going to be this function divided by, you want to divide negative GH GT the height of the leg itself by 2. And then if you make it -2, I think that'll work. Let's find out. Too much copy paste. So there's still, this API is, I was saying yesterday with the 2D thing, this is what I would call rather direct, where I end up typing a lot of coordinates and stuff directly, right? So that isn't totally perfect yet. What have I done? So it's wrong. Oh, do I have to also move it down a 1/4 inch because of the thickness of that? Yeah. GH minus GT is the height of that, divided by 2, -2, moves it down. But I also have to, from this whole thing, subtract half of G thickness. Oh man, how readable is that? This is one thing that I've not figured out how to handle very gracefully. If you're doing, like, the math of this isn't hard, but it's confusing to read, especially if you've got a lisp there. So now that's in the correct spot. So I can almost guarantee that there's a smarter way to do this sort of thing. And the thought that comes to mind is, when I'm moving objects around, it almost makes sense to have encoded into the data structure itself, like the local origin, and then infer basic mount points or something like that. So in the case of a box, it automatically has the exact result coordinates for all 8 of the corners, the center of all of its sides, and stuff like that. I don't know. There are ways maybe to make this better. It seems this seems not perfect to me. I understand this because I just wrote it right now, and now it's linked to the global variables, so changing this should automatically move things properly, which I can actually try right now. 16 by 10, make it a really weird looking desk, by 20. What happened? Built. It's empty. Why would it be empty? Okay. Redo. Did I burn my redos? Oh, what have I done? Ugh. Oh, I'm pressing the wrong buttons, that's why. Okay, save that. Okay, that worked. Okay, so this changed properly. Oh, did I? Oh, I didn't finish the work here. These also have to change. I didn't properly account for the width and depth yet. I only did the height, of course. So let me actually change the height and see. I'll keep this 32. Turn this to 30. So that, will it work? Yeah, it did. It shortened those, which is what I wanted. So what went wrong before? Did I maybe make this like way too short or something? I don't know. Oops. Well, let's try. It was 20 last time, right? I think I made it. Yeah. The height shouldn't matter. Like, it should go 10.5. Yeah. There. A perfect desk. Yeah, okay, so that's working. Now, I'm trying to think if there's a more sensible approach to this so that this doesn't look as gross. If I take this as an example, def chords, top table, top corners. Naming things is so hard. I hate naming things. All right. So what I'm doing here is the x coordinate, the y coordinate, and the z coordinate. Table top corners is wrong. It's leg position chords. Sure, that'll work. Okay, the leg position coordinates, these ones are not properly handled yet. This one is good. And this is only temporary because this is not the leg design I'm going to go with anyway. But to showcase what I'm doing, let's do this first here. This coordinate is half of the width of the tabletop minus half of the width of this chunk here, and that leg I have as a 2x4, which, brief aside, a 2x4 piece of wood is not 2x4 inches in profile. It's less than that. It's, I think, 1 3/8 and 3 3/8 or something like that. It's ridiculous. Naming things it just nothing makes sense in the world of materials and design. It's crazy. You just have to know this stuff. Like, anyway, whatever. Let it be what it is. But for the sake of this, actually, what if I just make them 1x1 for easier math? No, 2x2. No, scratch that. For the purposes of this illustration, I'm going to do two things. I'm gonna have a little. Does this work? Yeah. Okay. So I think this should work. I'm gonna show the let here. A let. Can you do a let inside a def? I think so. Okay. There's that. Oh, let. I haven't set up my VS Code to handle things very well. So editing this inside here, also not ideal. Another thing to improve is the way in which a user can write their pros in their file and their executables without any real issues, and still get things like syntax highlighting, right? Like the only reason I'm able to understand this is because I'm working on it right now. But if I open this up in a few hours, it kind of gets a little confusing again. I keep distracting myself with all these little things I have to get done. Note to self, focus a little better in the future. Just checking how long I've been streaming. 1 hour. I feel like I've got at least another hour of this to work with, because I haven't even technically got to the function I wanted to add, which was an extrude function, but I'll let it be. So let me just test this. Let ASDF be 14, and instead of 14 here I'm going to write ASDF. Will that work? Oh, I haven't used them yet. Instead of this here, leg position corners. Should see no change. And if I change this to 24, one of the legs should move, unless there's an error happening. Oh, there is. Def ASDF let. Should test this stuff in here. Y is 14. Let Y be 14, and then you want to return Y, Y, Y. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So it can work, I just am typing things wrong. I am actually gonna go to the washroom for a minute. Bathroom break. And then I'll come back and think about what I'm doing. Let's see. Mute. Alright, I'm back. And I was experiencing a glitch of some kind. Right? It's gonna spit out an error. Yeah. Yes, it is. Back to figuring it out. Let me need to write and automate tests. Yeah, I do. Let's just do useful snippets. No, snippets. Begin source Clojure, of course, and this runs in the builder namespace. ns builder. No, stylo.builder. Right. I think I do in namespace. And then I run md dash page, arrow page, slurp, and then the name of the file, standing dash point dot md. Okay, is that gonna work? MB, I think so. Oof. Oh yeah, so I'm looking for errors now. That's correct. Okay. Persistent vector cannot be cast to Java lang number. I know that. Of course I know that. Just comment out the entire figure and just do leg, pose, corners. Even that's not working. What have I done? What have I done? Let ASDF be. Oh. Ooh, typos. Typos, typos, typos. ASDF. Maybe that's why people don't use ASDF as random variables. And maybe that's also not solving the problem. It's still not solving the problem. All right. Right, so since I commented this out, yeah, I'm gonna grab this back, start this over, def leg position chords as this list of these numbers. That's leg position coordinates there. This should be positive 14, I think it was. That looks like what I want it to look like. Now that that's working, let's add in a let statement. ASDF is equal to 24, so I can see a difference. And instead of 14 here, ASDF. Let's indent that. That should work, I think. We'll find out. There we go. Yet again, the problem is basically just me. Okay, so but what I've done here, this let is, it's called local, it locally binds the symbol ASDF to this, and then when you're out of the context of the let statement there, there's the symbol ASDF holds no meaning. You can use it to, like, if there's, so what I could do here, for example, I could have GT is that global def, so it exists at the top level of the namespace. I could use this let here to locally redefine it to be 14. Right, so oops, GT. And it will be 14 in the context of the leg position coordinates, but it'll still be 0.5 everywhere else. And I can show you that by writing GT here. Yeah. That should, yeah, so here we go. The value is still 0.5, even though in here in the let statement I made it 14. So you could, I think you could do weird stuff like this, let GT, and then I think it'll be equal to 0.5 in there. But that's, yes it will, but that can be, it can be a little confusing, so you don't necessarily need to, but you can do that. And you can even build on things like, how do I, let's stop naming it GT because it doesn't need to be. So leg position coordinates, the reason I wanted to do this in the first place is leg width is 4, and then leg depth is 2. There. Now I can just really easily refer to those variables and change the value of them later and keep it local. Once again, this is probably not the right way to handle things like objects that could have configurable dimensions in the context of a user working with this library. I have to think about that some more, but for the purposes of this example, just using the local let should be fine. So this was 14, which is half of the, yeah, it's half the width of the, it's half the global width minus half the leg width, I think. So half the global width minus half the leg width. Yes? Yep. And then this here, this 9, is the same, same, but instead of the width, it's going to be the depth. Right, there. So, let me just make sure that I see no change. Yep. Okay, so this now, that's pretty nice. But if I change all of these, if I change this to also use leg position coordinates, I'm putting the second leg in the wrong spot. It's going to be directly in the same position as the first leg, and that's not what you need, right? See, it looks now like there's only 3 legs, but really I have, on this position here, I've drawn 2 legs directly on top of each other, and that's not what I want. What I actually want to do is I'll make an example here. Oop. I want to use this map function. So map is really nice. You can use it to map a function onto lists of things. So if I want to add the number 2, 3, and 4 to the numbers 5, 6, and 7, right? I can map plus, so it'll add 2 and 5, 3 and 6, 4 and 7, and then I get a list out from that, 7, 9, 11. So what I want to do here is just map, multiply -1, -1, -1 onto some numbers to get the negatives of them. 9, 3, 5. That should work, I think. Yeah. So there, what I can use this to just map the leg coordinates into the different quadrant spots by doing I don't even need to, this will always just be +1. So I can imagine the back, so front left is 1, 1, 1. If front left is 1, 1, 1, then back left is -1, -1, 1. There could be another one that's just -1 in the middle there, just like that. So that's all I need to do here. So it'll be negative, 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 and then positive, negative for this one. If none of this makes sense, just wait a moment. So, before I delete that one, this one is going to be -1, +1, and what's a better I'll just leave that the same. What happens if I do this? Map, come on, map just the 2 onto the 3. I forget. Yeah. Yeah, okay. Just checking if you map 2 unequal lists onto each other, it depends on, you have to make sure you know what happens. So in that case, it dropped the 5, right? In both scenarios, it dropped the 5, but I need all 3 coordinates. So I'm going to leave the negative defined in leg position coordinates. It's not perfect. It doesn't make a lot of sense that it's there necessarily, but it's still just an example. So this one, let me just comment that out. This one is going to be map multiply onto leg pose chords, and it's going to be, Z is going to be 1, X is -1, and Y is going to be 1 in this case. And then I can delete the rest of this list because I don't need it. So if I save that, and if I did it right, that leg should be back in this spot here, which it is. And then I can copy the next one, which was, wait, where was it? Negative, negative, positive, negative, negative. Yeah. And then this one's going to be positive, positive, negative. But now I have to make sure the brackets are correctly closed. I think that's good, and we should see no change or errors if I did it wrong again. Classic, 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 classic. Oh, maybe I have to do map V. Yeah, I think that might be it. So if that works, it still doesn't work. Oh, no. Okay. Move. Close the list. Move. Map. Move. Pay attention. Map, multiply, 1, -1, 1 onto leg, pose, chords. Should work, right? Map V, not C, because they're vectors. I think I closed this properly. Oh, I just missed a bracket again. Let's see that this reports a build instead of an error. There we go. Refresh to make sure. Now, in theory, if I change this to 20 and this to 12, 12, and this to 20, 20. Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. Man, that took me too long. But that's nice. That's cool. So you can imagine if you could run 20, and this should be 32. If you could run in the document itself just some updates with some sliders and see it recalculate and rebuild the SVG for you in almost real time, that'd be really nice. That'd be so cool. I could even make this 2 by 2 and it should properly change the legs now. Oh, one problem. The position changes here, but I have not, I should really incorporate this whole, this box definition in its own, it should be wrapped up in its own sort of thing, because these are now entirely unrelated to the leg width and leg depth values there. So that's where I'm going to get into the idea of parts and assemblies, I think. Right? So you don't want to have to change numbers in multiple places like that. It doesn't make sense. It's way too confusing and you can just get totally lost in everything. This construction here, it kind of, if you look, everything is exactly identical except for the positioning of it. That kind of hints that you can wrap up even more of that into its own sort of part definition, and then I could probably build a helper function like defin copy to points or something like that, or array copy, stuff like that. In programs like SolidWorks and whatnot, that would be called sketch-driven patterns and stuff like that. Feature idea. Copy to points slash sketch-driven patterns, array patterns, grid patterns, etc. For all of these pattern things, you can actually use the same function and just pass it different lists of points, and you can just have a different function define the point list for you automatically. So you could radially calculate points out, or you could grid calculate, and then just copy to points would be like the generic. You pass different lists in and it can do that. That'll be fun. Okay, now can I finally get to some extrude function? This is a work in progress extrude function. There. I don't know. I'm not looking at viewer numbers or anything like that. If there's, if you're watching this and you don't want to chat, that's totally cool. If there's stuff that I'm doing that makes no sense and you're really curious, totally go ahead, say hi, type a question in the chat. Do my best to explain things if I can. Yeah, just keep that in mind. It's all good. It doesn't even, well, it doesn't. I love chatting with people, but talking out loud to myself through the thought process of what I'm doing is actually kind of a nice way to think through things from time to time. I don't want to do it 24/7, but it's actually a nice way to think. If you can think out loud, it's nice. It's not going to error out on me, is it? Perfect. Let's build another spot here where I can make a sample extrude function. Oh no, you know what? I'm gonna wanna go over here. Snippets, test snippets. Let's go to the chunk extension. Yeah, start working on that a little bit. Box instead of cuboid. Okay, box transforms. Ooh, I actually don't know if is extrude a transform, or is it its own thing? I'm gonna treat it as its own thing. Extrude. The extrude function will work on XY plane shapes. So a list of points of nodes and edges in so a list of nodes and edges where nodes are X, Y, like that. If I begin Clojure, so what I've done here is kind of just made a very basic structure. I don't think it's the smartest structure. because it doesn't really, transforming it is not the best yet. Oh. But what this is, this box function, I can run it. Box 1, 2, 3, 4 is fine. There we go. It spits out a map of nodes, edges, and faces. And if I look at, let's def ASDF as the box 234 or 246. If I take the nodes from that, nodes of ASDF, it's just a straight list of its own map with a value and attributes. This is why, like, I don't know if this is smart or silly to do it that way. But you'll look at, so since it's a centered box, I passed in 2, 4, and 6, and you get half of that, right? So the node is at -1, -2, -3, and the other corner is at 1, 2, 3, which is exactly half of those. And I intentionally divided by a floating point here to coerce it into a floating point, because otherwise, if you do stuff like this, divided 2 by 4, Clojure gives you a ratio of half, which is really cool, but I didn't want to have to deal with that particularly. But if I go like this, if I divide 2.0 by 2.0, it gives you the float right away. Likewise, if you do by 4, yeah. Now, floating point stuff has its own massive set of problems if you're just kind of naively comparing them and things like that. So there's a lot of math work, like arithmetic work, to do if I want to eventually have this be really robust. Like, I'll probably have to find a good numerics library. For what I'm dealing with right now, I haven't had to worry about it all that much, so I'm not going to start now. But to build this, I have an entity builder, and the value of it can be, it doesn't check anything, it can be arbitrary. So I could build an entity and the value of it can be it can be a string, but I'm just defaulting to putting colors and fills in there. Again, probably need to rethink it, but it works sort of. So like if I do this, if I do val of first of the nodes from ASDF, I'll get a vector of the first value of that. If I do, instead of val, I do adders, attributes of the first node, I'll get both the color and the fill in a map. So I need to do one more level, color, to get the color, slate gray. And the color is, since it's SVG, it's just a CSS value. Like I could do a hex code for a different color there. And the problem with that actually is it overrides whatever I had in CSS, so it breaks your assumption. If I have a CSS file, I would expect to be able to change the color in CSS, but currently I just overwrote that, so need to work on that again too. Default attributes in rendered objects should not supersede, is that right? Supersede, I don't know. Should not be more important than English, yeah. Attributes in rendered objects should not be more important than the CSS. Yeah, that works. So extrude. Then to extrude, take a take a height value, and all nodes are transformed with appropriate z values. So actually, this probably won't be too hard, because if I assume center extrusion as a starting point, actually, for the easiest implementation, assume extrusion always happens from z equals 0 to z equals the supplied height. So I can then, all I have to do is attach the z value is copy the nodes, attach z0 to one set and zh to the other. Right, so that's quite easy. So if I want to do that, what's the right structure here? What's a good approach? Let's see. First off, how long have I been going? Get a drink for a second. Okay. Let's use the move transform as a sort of example to myself here. So what I've done with move is have a function that operates on just a single point. Right, so that I can demonstrate move point. I want to move this point by 1, 1, 1, and the point I'm on is 0, 0, 0. It should return 1, 1, 1. It's extremely simple. It's just a map of plus, right? So 3, 1, 1. That's extremely simple. If I do extrude point, I don't need a delta, I need a height. And I don't need to map anything. I actually just want to concatenate. Yeah, concatenate or I always forget these. Conj onto, let's imagine the point 1, 1, and I want to extrude it 10 on Z. 1, 1, 10 would be the top point of that point, of that line extruded. Does that make sense? Yeah, sure. Each point. Concat, no, I can actually just conj point H. But that's equivalent to moving a point only up H. It's not. And should I handle if there's already a Z value? What happens if I do take 2 from, so take the third position from a vector that only has 2 elements, it should nil? Oh, no. I'm doing the wrong thing. Nth is what I wanted. Nth. What's the nth one of 2, 2? No, 2, 2, 4. So I know. What am I doing wrong here? Nth collection first. 1, 2. I want to take the first position. This should return 1. Take the second position, should return 2. Take the third position, null. It gives an error. Huh? That makes sense. Quit that. So, I'm not going to worry about that right now. I can make it return a list of conj point h and conj point 0. And I can actually make this pass in a point of any length if I destructure the point xy. Oops. Oh, right. Point, I'll do it in a let, that's fine. Let xy be point. Yeah, that'll work just as well. But I'm structuring it back. Maybe there's a smarter way to do that. Oh. Conj take 2 from point 0 and conj take 2 point h. So that'll return a list. I think take 2, this might, since take I think returns just a list, not a vector, conj might put the 0 on the other side of it. So I have to check that I haven't messed up. Extrude point by 20, 0.11. Yeah. So you see that's wrong there. What's a smarter way to write that? Concatenate. Take 2 of this vector 1, 1, turns it into a list, into this, turns it back into that. So I'll just do that. Into the vector, into this vector. Smoothest way, there's probably a better way to do that, but I don't know everything about Clojure. So now let's try extrude point again. So it returns this vector list, right? So if I extrude a point, it turns it into a line, which is correct here. If this is extrude along Z, so no problem. If you pass it a point with a Z on it already, it projects, yeah, it doesn't add it, which I'm not sure. Not sure if that's better. Well, the extrude point ignores any existing z values. This results in an equivalent. This is equivalent to projecting the given point onto the xy plane, sets z to 0, and extruding from there. Yeah. Now, since like you have operations like rotate and move that move generic objects anywhere, I technically already have everything I need. So I could, if I assume a shape is always on xy and I can extrude it only in z, I can, if I need to get it in a new position, I can transform it further. And then I can, for convenience, I can always wrap those functions into higher level functions. So it's kind of fine to do this. The only thing, if I want a concept of sketch planes in 3D positions, I can handle that differently as well. I'll worry about that another time. All right, let's see. Extrude, shape, sketch, shape, height, sketch. So another thing, like as I'm writing these, sometimes I am inconsistent with where I put the arguments. So that's something I have to do during like refactoring and stuff, is make sure that things are consistent. So here, for example, technically the move function I had the object first and then the point value to move it second. So this would be consistent with that. So I'll just leave it that way for now. I'm thinking because this extrude point, right? It takes in a single point and then, but it spits out 2 points in its own list. So I can't, what happens if I map extrude point onto a list of points, which is going to be 0, 0, 1, 1, and 2, 2. Oh, I need a height. Map extrude point partial extrude point 20. Right, so does map cat work? Yeah, okay. Alright, so what I did there, so this map, it is a list of lists of lists. So there's 3 levels there. But if you map cat, it runs the out, like it just concatenates the output of each run onto a running list. And the reason that that's useful is when I do extrude here, I can grab the nodes, and I can the render nodes. I can map cat. Is map cat v a thing? Or map v cat? Map v cat. No. Map cat. Oh, I don't, yeah, okay, that's fine. So grab the nodes into a list, run this on the nodes, partial instead of move point, it's extrude point by the height h of the nodes, which is here, and then associate back into sketch, back into the nodes section, the new nodes. So this will double the amount of nodes in the sketch element. That should work if I nodes from the sketch, of course. Run that. There we go. So now this should, if I def ASDF as nodes, nodes map entity onto this whole thing. Why'd I copy that? I could just, so the nodes are a map entity onto a list of a bunch of nodes. 3, 4, 5. So I'm just going to draw a simple picture, close the map, close the map, close the def, yeah. So this is 0, 0, this is 1, 0, this is 1.5, comma 0.5, this is 1, 1, and then this is 0, 1. That'll make like a square with a triangle on the right. ASDF, it's a map of nodes with values. And then if I run extrude on ASDF to 20, yeah, there we go. Right, so see what happened there? I have 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 20. Yeah. Now what I don't know is if that's a good idea. What I'm thinking is, if you look at how I did this box here, the nodes are values, right? They're just x, y, z coordinates in a list. The edges is a list of pairs of indices into the nodes, right? So this first edge is from the first point to the second point as referenced by the indices here. So if I'm running a function that doubles the amount of nodes and interleaves them like this, and if that function does not also update the edges, all of the edges will be wrong, right? Because imagine before, if I had an edge 0, 1, that edge would be drawn from 0, 0 to 1, 0. But if I just associate the new nodes in there, suddenly that same edge is from 0, 0 to 0, 0, 20. It's no longer correct. So this is not complete yet, and I need to think about it for a moment, because I'm doing the like most naive thing, which is nice, but naivete is not really rewarded all the time. Let me check here. Alright, so that's the box. The extrude here kinda works, but it's not done because it doesn't associate edges appropriately. Well, first of all, sketch. Let's just, I gotta get going soonish, but let's start actually with something that's not too hard to implement. So if I define sketch as points, right, I can assume, actually let's see, can I creates a sketch is wrong, shape a polygon creates a closed polygon from the list of points. Closed polygon tracing the list of points. So I'll start here, right? It's 2D. Closed 2D polygon tracing the list of points. Yeah, for right now that's going to be fine. So what I can do is create, let edges be so what I'm doing, let edges blah. In here, I'm just gonna spit out a nodes is map entity onto points. Those will be the nodes, and then the edges will be map entity onto edges, right? And then faces faces I could theoretically make faces is actually going to be just entity of a single face, which is defined by edges. There's a list of edges. Wait, entity, right? So this list of edges could look like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, so the face itself, if I don't triangulate, like make it in triangles or whatever, I can Is that how I made faces? Map entity. Yeah, so faces is also a list of vectors that have the indices of the edges entry. So the face of this is going to just be the range of the length of the edges range length of this list, which is 1, 2, 3, 4 edges. Unable to resolve. Oh, is it count? Might be count. Yeah. Didn't think so. Into no vec. Yeah, okay. See, this is one thing I love about the REPL is you can, if you don't remember how something should work, you could just kind of try it right here, see what works and what doesn't, and then put those things back into your code, and then just swap things out appropriately. Okay, but I'm not counting that. I'm counting edges. Yeah. Oh, one thing I have to check. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. If I range the count 0 to 3, it does give me all valid indices of that, so we're good. Okay, faces. Now the only thing I have to do with edges, the edges are going to be in order from the points. They're going to be partition 2, 1, range of count of, imagine a list of points that's 3 long, and just we'll make them 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, 2. Right, so does that make sense? There will be, if there are 3 points, there will be 2 edges, right? The first edge will go from the first point to the second point, and the second edge will go from the second point to the third point. So that is what I need, but I want to just make them vectors. So vec of part, wait, do I need to? Map entity edges. I don't need to put the partition. The only thing I need to be in a vector is this part here, so that's a little easier. So I can partition by 2 in a step of 1 vec of range of count of points. That's the edges, and it spits out a map. Does it work? That's the next step. Polygon 2D. Def points. I want to get the map v vals from nodes of ASDF points. Oh, I did it wrong. Nodes ASDF map val. Oh, I think it's supposed to be map. Yeah, I think I put vals instead of val. Map val points. There we go. Okay. Control C M B. So polygon 2D of points should work. Okay, I did something wrong because edges, just like box 222, the edges have values that are in a vector here, so I messed something up. Well, I don't need this vec here. This will probably work. Map vec onto that. Yeah, okay, that worked. Right, so nope, I'm running the wrong function. Don't want to make a box. I want to do this. It did work. Right? So what I just did there, partition returns a list that looks like this of this, right? A list of lists. So if I map vec onto that, it'll turn those back into vectors like I wanted. So that's helpful. So making a polygon now, I can now use a polygon. It produces a shape or a thing in the format that I'm anticipating, and then extruding it. I can extrude a point, but I can't only do that. I need to extrude something and operate on its edges as well as produce new faces. So I'm gonna just take some notes on that, and then I'm gonna get going. Extrude needs to edges and faces to the new it needs to add edges and faces. The extrude function currently only changes nodes, which will break the edges. Edges need to I can either update the edge indices and add new edges, or add the new nodes after existing nodes. Don't interleave them. Then no indices have to change. Only new edges and faces are appended onto their appropriate lists. So that's probably what I'll do. Seems good. And that seems like a good time for me to call it for the day. So I've showcased a bit of how I actually draw some of these things, including things like sort of global variables here and locally binding things so that I can use coordinate positions more sensibly here, so I'm not repeating as much. I realize there's a lot of stuff that I need to fix up myself and work on, so I have a list here of what I thought about while I was streaming, so that's really good to get back to. Save that actually. Save this. We're all good. And I actually got I have a clearer, it doesn't look like it much, but I actually have a bit of a clearer idea as to how I'm going to proceed with designing this this little desk of mine too, so that's a little win for me personally. So I had another great stream today. I'm really happy with the work I did, happy that I was able to share it on here for a little bit, and I gonna be back again tomorrow. So all right, I'm gonna call it. If I can stop.